Welcome to the Westport Library. Today's program will begin momentarily. Supported by Verso Studios, created locally and shared with the world.
Happy Earth Day. And welcome to tonight's Artist Talk with kHyal and Migs Burrows, celebrating the opening of kHyal's new exhibit, Signs of the Times, The Perils and Pleasures of Plastic. I'm Carol Erger-Fass, and I'm the exhibit curator here at the library. When I was putting together this year's calendar, timing kHyal's exhibit around Earth Day felt like an obvious choice, because kHyal is a self-taught environmental activist and digital art pioneer who's been working with recycled materials since the early 1980s. She started out in street art and found art object sculpture, and then discovered the computer and became part of the first international wave of artists experimenting with personal computers. Throughout her career, she's moved fluidly between analog and digital media, and her credits span both. On the analog side, exhibitions at the Outsider Art Fair, the Folk Art Society, and the American Visionary Art Museum. On the digital side, work shown internationally in Berlin, Buenos Aires, and London, and featured in publications like Art News, Art Forum, and Nylon. Sustainability, conservation, and climate action run through everything she does. She uses color, pattern, and messaging as tools for social engagement, and applies that across mixed media, fashion, and character design. She created a pink, weather-loving squirrel climate action superhero. Now that is like a mouthful. And her trademark Mega Glam designs have appeared in galleries and sold in stores. And if that wasn't enough, kHyal also found time to graduate from the New York City Department of Sanitation's Trash Academy, become a citizen scientist studying horseshoe crabs, guest lecture at the Yale School of Sustainability, and serve as Chief Creative Officer on digital projects for the Whitney, BAM, and Lincoln Center. Today, she continues to explore emerging technologies like AI, while also creating analog sculptures from ocean and landfill plastics, which is exactly what brings us here tonight. Before I hand this over to kHyal and Migs, I want to thank the library's art committee for everything they do to make these exhibits and programs possible, and Verso Studios for producing and recording tonight's presentation. Afterwards, we have time for a Q&A, and since we're recording, we ask that you come up to the mic that's over there so everyone can hear your questions. Thanks, and enjoy tonight.
Going a long way.
Paper cups.
Paper cups.
Well, happy Earth Day, and thank you all for coming. And before we dive into kHyal's amazing evolution as an artist and activist, what did you play with dolls as a kid? Did you have there's a lot of Barbies, and well, there's dolls everywhere. Did you play with dolls as a kid?
I had a short phase of playing with dolls, but I wanted to be a cowboy, and so I had cowboy dolls, and I always wanted to have a horse, which I later did have, but I turned everything into a horse, including my Great Dane, which I knit a orange bridle for.
Really?
Used to pretend,
Could you ride it as a little kid?
I didn't ride her because it would have hurt her, but I pretended to ride her, like I hovered above her. And then I put long reins and instead drove her like a plow horse in the backyard.
Yeah, there's a lot of the creatures, you know, the sharks, there's dinosaurs, a lot of menacing. Is there some fear-based, like, exorcising some?
I think sharks get a bad rap. They're very important to our ecosystem and world, and they're always positioned as evil characters. So I don't see them that way, but I sometimes use them that way in my work to show the aggression, but it's not about them. It's really, I mean, we all have a purpose, right? Every creature has a purpose, and sharks are no worse or better than anything else.
So let's dive in, because there's a lot to cover. So is this,
Yes.
is this in your studio, or is this another exhibit?
Yeah, that is an installation in my studio, and I do these every year during the American Fabrics Open Studios in the fall. So I'll do a new one this fall, so if you want to see what I'm doing, you can come in November. So this is where it all starts, this photo. That's me in Boston in 1981-ish, where I'm just showing the trajectory, how long I've been doing this, because certain things get very popular. Like this kind of work is getting popular all of a sudden, right? Work about the, the environment. But it started with me collecting broken toys, and that's a broken piano, part of a broken piano. And also, I was buying second market and vintage clothes in grammar school and wearing them to school, but this is in college, and I started a business where I would cherry pick really nice clothes from the warehouses that sold them by the pound. There would be mountains of them, and you had to climb through them, and I'd sell them on Newbury Street in downtown Boston. I also would remake clothes, which is very popular now, but that outfit of the leopard jacket is a different silhouette than it was, and so are the pants. So I was just starting there to give you a sense of how long I've been doing this kind of work.
I mean, this is completely irrelevant, but the picture on the right, you sort of have a Princess Di thing going on there.
It's so true, and at the time, the person who took that, Ian Churchill, who's a great photographer, he was my boyfriend, and I was, I took a class at Emerson on television, and I bought a thrift store gown, bright pink gown, and I had him put on giant plastic ears, and I had him come with me, and we did Princess Diana and Prince Charles, yeah. So
I wasn't far away.
I was mistaken for her before, yeah.
Okay. And this is just the dumpster you decorated, right? And
Yes, then from Boston, I moved to Los Angeles, and I started, as an unknown person. This is really when I started to make art. I was just trying to figure out, like, where could I get shown in a big city like Los Angeles? And I ended up working at a gallery. I was actually recruited just because I used to visit it a lot, and I had the idea that I should paint their dumpster, so they actually commissioned me for money to paint that, and that was right on the edge of Beverly Hills. And I found a lot of stuff in the alleys there. I was so shocked because I hadn't seen that, where I lived before, but there was so much thrown away, like that lamp, that beautiful lamp, and that wooden rocking horse I got at a thrift store for like $5. So I started to paint on things, and I also made paintings, and I think it's funny in that one painting of the pig that's unfinished, there's a trash can in it. Because I wasn't really thinking of my future as so related to waste, and I have like a fondness of learning about waste management. This is about that same time frame, but when I was living in San Francisco, so I would say that was 1984 or 5, and I just am showing that is my first work. I don't have much left of that time, but where I was taking broken toys and turning them into new things, and that was about a dozen years before Toy Story came out. So you didn't see other people doing that, and I actually had a show in San Francisco where I was living, and I was very excited about it. It was in a bookstore, and I could see the bookstore window from my apartment at the time, so it was like those were shown where I could actually see them from my kitchen window.
I think Pixar may have had a spy that saw your work.
I'm not indicating that. Just the fact that, that would be nice to think that I made a difference on that level. But it's just I have different ideas a lot of times before they're popular.
Sure. Now, you're unique among many artists. I mean, we walk around and nobody necessarily knows we're an artist or not.
Right.
There's no mistaking, really. But you're sort of a I mean, you live and dress your art. I mean, you're like a walking installation in a way. Performance art, maybe, would you call it?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, well, I used to do performance art, and actually I started doing performance art with Margaret Bodell is in the audience, and she had a gallery called Art in Heaven, and when I moved from LA to New Haven, and I did some performance art there. She's always encouraged me to do different things, but I did mostly performance stills, like I would photograph myself, because I was very shy and most of the time. But the way I dress actually looks like I'm calling attention to myself, but it makes me comfortable. Like, dressing like myself makes me not self-conscious, but I'm not doing it so people look at me. But now I'm glad if they do, if I happen to have a message about, you know, plastics or whatever.
An extension of your
right.
art message. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
That is 1987, and that's the first time I showed my horseshoe crabs. Again, it was at Margaret Bodell's gallery. She was very visionary in many ways, and she gave me a show where a lot of people probably would just thought, you know, that's not art. You're just, you know, those are horseshoe crab shells with various things happening to them. So I'm just showing the context there because I started my own horseshoe crab rescue in Bridgeport, and it's very important to me.
And when I was a kid, I grew up here, and you'd walk on Campo Beach, and there'd be the horseshoe crab, just the shells would wash up.
Yeah.
What happened to did other predators eat them? I mean, they're
no,
just these empty shells.
They molt about 11 times. You know, that's the data I've read. And so it's just the shell. They look exactly on both sides like a complete horseshoe crab because they just come out the edge, that top edge of their shell. And so they fill with water a lot of times and sand when they've been washed up. And so they feel too and look, they get darker and they look like a dead horseshoe crab, but those are, especially in September, those are molts. They're pretty remarkable. So this is years later. Again, this is just sort of a timeline, this presentation. This is in the 90s, and this is a piece that was shown at the American Visionary Art Museum. Again, I loved finding like old things that people were getting rid of. Like, well, that was an old Bible box, and I think there's some slides in there from the 50s of some bacteria and all, you know, whatever I would find. And Popeye, of course, I am what I am. A lot of plastics that people throw away.
So is there an inventory? I mean, I don't know if there's a picture of your studio in here. I mean, you're full. But is there an inventory, a storage unit filled with it? Or would you, for each project, do you go out and search for that specific project? Or do you just have a garage full of things to choose from?
I don't have a garage. I have various ebbs and flows of the material where, you know, if I've had to get rid of large objects that I've saved, like mannequins, vintage mannequins and things over the years. But now I have a good amount of space in the studio, and I try and be careful in my selection, but it's amazing how much you can accumulate. Just picking up plastic on the beach, like is shown in the photograph on this shirt. It's like, I have probably, you know, 10 feet by 3 feet just of plastics from Seaside Park, just in one summer. They proliferate. So sometimes I give them away if they're useful, like beach toys, because I find a lot of those in new condition. I'll talk about that a little more after. These are more, this is actually in New York, from a New York shows, which Margaret was involved with Rocking Horse Cafe with her partner. Both of these were, you know, I found these items and then built on them with other found in thrift store items, and they both won jurors awards from directors from Sotheby's and Museum del Barrio in New York. So that does make me chuckle to have my work, it's garbage, and, you know, I'm just putting it together, and it could, you know, it could end up in a museum. And I don't do that just for myself. I do it to try and make my mark on society, where it's about people's value is who they are. It's not what you have, it's not what you spend, it's not where you're from, it's what you contribute. This is just another example of the piece. That one is about from maybe 2005. So we've gone from the 80s and the 90s and now the 2000s, where the work is consistent. You know, I just keep doing this.
So what were your parents? What did your parents do? Were they creative, or did they support you, or did they said go for it, or were they kind
They
of?
think I'm weird. My dad is a fine artist, but he's a conservative fine artist. So he paints. He loves nature, and I thank him so much for all he showed me as a young person: camping, hiking, respecting all creatures, taking out garbage of anywhere we hiked, or and being on the Money Island and the Thimble Islands and the tidal pools and. But no, my family thought I was weird, but we figured it all out.
Yeah, I think in your bio you mentioned your first introduction to plastics was the tab,
Yes.
the plastic.
Yes, I still remember it.
Thing on Thimble Islands floating around.
It was floating in, it was a partial six-pack, and I remember the plastic ring was holding it together and why it was on the surface, and it was so unusual back then. It was disturbing.
Those are the things that turtles get entangled in.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Or eat.
And now people just don't, it's proliferates so much that people don't take notice of it, and we need to. That's another piece around, 2005-ish. That one's called Flower Power.
And these are all found? I mean, do you go to toy stores and buy stuff?
Not toy stores, no. Thrift stores. I only use second market materials. And so even the sequins and everything are second market. I did used to buy stickers. I don't do that anymore. So you can see like Pikachu in the background there. But I have some now from a long time ago. And so I have an archive of some cool stickers I could pull out should I want to. And again, that was after 2005 sometime. That was New Haven, a show called 101 Dresses, curated by Linda Lindroth, and it's all found objects.
So how big have you worked? That's almost life-size, but have you built?
That's about as big as I go. I mean, I now do installations that are, rooms, but I started doing installation art before it was a thing in New Haven. So I wasn't attempting to do that. I do it now again because I'm finding joy in it, but I almost find that now that everything's an installation, that it's not that interesting. But in New Haven, in the early days, I did installations at Art Space and also the New Haven Arts Council, which were full rooms. And actually, Margaret went with me to Railroad Salvage. If anyone has ever heard of Railroad Salvage and Ruby Vine on the television commercials, no? Anyway, they gave me some AstroTurf for free, and so I lined the place with AstroTurf and had artificial bird sounds and that type of thing. And that then was very fresh because you weren't seeing that, or the show Spring Break in New York is all installations, and it looks very similar to me now. It's like, why would every artist choose to do that? Horseshoe crabs again, 2010.
How big is that piece? That's an actual horseshoe crab?
That's a baby.
Oh, it's a baby?
So that piece is like 10 by 10.
Oh, that's all?
And it's coated in Martha Stewart glitter. I find lots of Martha Stewart products in thrift stores because she overproduces them. And that's just plastic. Most of it is plastic, and it will go, into the landfill if one doesn't use it. That broil piece I just found on the ground, just like that. It was probably charbroil from a grill. And then that's some other vintage glitter. Glitter's mostly plastic. It used to be metal, and you can find still some metal, but.
So that's a baby, and this may be a weird question, but that would be a tough birth. What do they come as eggs, or do they come fully formed when
They are fully
horseshoe
formed
crab gives birth?
as soon as the eggs are at a size you can see them with your eyes. You can see the horseshoe crabs in them. Yeah, so they look exactly like that.
They don't come out like that.
Yeah, they do.
Oh,
not with glitter though.
Not with.
But not that size. They're tiny, tiny,
okay.
tiny. Yeah, the eggs are tiny.
It looks
very
painful.
small.
I don't know. That's all.
And then that's another piece that's, Mickey bribing a Teletubby on the Universal lot. And that was in again, it's trash, but it was in a show at Grand Central Terminal. I was in a store there called Pick. It's still there, but it's around the corner, and they don't have They don't have artist displays there anymore. They used to do real artist shows, and I actually had my own section in there, and my husband, Carl, was my partner in that and produced a lot of journals. We actually used Martha Stewart journals. He ripped the covers off and made our own covers, so those were sustainable too. So we had a whole section. It said Mega Glam, and it had the weather squirrel. And it was just freaky because 750,000 people go through Grand Central Terminal on a slow day. And so to be in a space like that, exhibiting things like, found objects, was pretty fun.
So you mentioned Carl, so it's not too personal. So did you meet at an art situation, or how do you negotiate, like, how out there you are, or how out there he is, and how did you figure each other out?
Well, he concedes to me. Carl is extremely creative, but he's perfectly happy doing the production end of things. But he lives much more freely than I do. I tend to be very rigid. I make the bed the same way every day. If he makes the bed, it's different every time. He puts the pillows out backwards and upside down, and he twists things around. So everything he does it different every way, and I do things the same way in my regular life, only my art is the way I express my differences.
Yeah, I was gonna say your art would sort of betray that sense that you're, because it looks very spontaneous. So actually talking about that, so you formulate a piece in your head, or is it like, today I'm going to do something, and you just start pulling objects and moving them around until you're happy? Or do you have a thing in your mind of exactly what's going on?
Never a thing in my mind. It is pure intuition. I don't really feel like it comes from me. I just go, I go to the studio, and it just finds me, and that's the way I work. Even though I could intellectualize really anything I do once it's done, the making is completely intuitive. So.
And is it usually over the course of a day, or do you work on multiple? I'm always curious about artists that I can only do one thing at a time, and if it takes me a day or a week or a month, whatever it is, then I move on to the next. And I know painters that work on 6 paintings at the same time. Do you work on one piece at the same time?
I start multiple pieces, but sometimes I really just will focus on one. I like to have something else in queue. I use found or second market materials to mount my work on. So all those circles I found on the side of the road, or Carl did, a combination of our picking those up. He found them first, and of course, this is a classic. I usually say, what do I want those for? And then I was like, I couldn't live without those things. But so the circles are all just found on the side of the road in Bridgeport at a place that used to throw away their circles for some reason. They kept the holes. So there's probably other artists here. Frank might know about them. Other artists in Bridgeport have used them, but they don't do that anymore. And when I use other materials, I try and get them already in the market. Like I prefer not to have to buy retail art supplies. And so I prep the surface. I might prep the surface so when I'm done with one, I can work right away on another and not have to wait, because the only painting I do on those is the base.
And what's your glue of choice for?
I try not to use glues because they're pretty terrible too. I use screws for almost exclusively. And I love using screws for that reason, and also because it just, it feels so permanent, like no one's gonna change my truth.
Well, I've noted, looking at your work again, and they add a sparkle to it.
Yes.
You have a thing for Phillips heads? They're all Phillips heads.
Well, no, they're just easier. Phillips heads are easy, but I do have a preference for the rounded, shiny ones. Yeah. And I also like those elements in architecture. When something had, like when I moved to Los Angeles, I noticed how so many buildings have these metal sort of adornments. They're just like decoration, but they're metal and round usually.
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean, it's sort of a subtext to everything, because I started counting, and in one little round piece, I stopped counting at 200.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hundreds, so you're doing that. Do you have an electric?
I do now. I was doing it by hand until Carl pointed out that might not be a good idea. And
He's good for something, right? He's good.
It really is hard on the wrist to do, because most of the pieces do have at least 300 screws, if not many more. Yeah.
Yeah, it just adds, it's an amazing, it's sort of in the background, but again, that sparkle I like, and the industrial aspect. It's almost counterintuitive to the toy, the playfulness of it.
Yes.
This industrial.
And also controlling.
Yeah, okay.
So the piece that was up, well, we were just talking about that, was actually a coat. I'm really into apparel. I'm not into fashion, because that's a business that just tries to get people to buy other stuff that they don't have. But that coat, the previous coat was from the Bridgeport Goodwill. I got it for 20 bucks. It was dead stock. It had the tags on it, and I don't really wear just that color. And so I had leftover zip ties, and I put them in the lining. There were about 1,500 of them in that previous one. The photos that's up now has one of my pieces bolted to the back, which does get heavier than one would expect when you're wearing it all day. But that's also a thrifted jacket, and that's just one of the ways I would get into art fairs without curation, without gatekeepers, without paying, and show whatever work I wanted. And then the media would take a picture of me, because they're just looking for stuff that's weird and interesting, right? If they can't find a celebrity, they'll take pictures of me or me and Carl and the outfits that I make.
Yeah, well, it's kind of prickly. I mean, it's kind of like, don't get too close, you know?
It's amazing how much that attracts people, though. Sometimes they want to touch it.
They want to touch it, sure.
And here's another example of that, when that happens at an art fair. So I kind of developed the system, did it for 18 years, and I haven't done it for the last couple of years, but Art Basel, Armory Arts Week, you know, South America, Switzerland, all over the world we would do this, but definitely we'd do it in Miami. And so this one, though, is in New York, and so I was wearing that outfit that I made, and I was photographed by BFA, but I was there as a journalist because I started a magazine. Carl's the photographer. He's not always with me, but he's always with me in Miami. This was in New York, and I was there to cover the art fair. So I was in the press preview, but I was wearing my art. And I had actually shot video of JR. That's JR, the artist. Some of you may know who that is.
Photos, a giant photo, mural, street murals?
Yeah, so, you know, I've met him before. He's a nice guy, but he's somewhat hard to approach,
Prickly.
right? Yeah, I mean, because he's got a crew usually around him. But I was there as a press, so I shot video of him when he was being filmed. He was doing something really interesting, and I shot video of that whole process, and it was with Jeffrey Deitch was there too, and I just ended up on the page just like that, which is hilarious. Like, I mean, I'm so grateful for every one of you who's here and listening to this, because you are the people who cared to see my work. But as you know, those people have millions of followers and people who love them. So it's weird to show up as just like a normal citizen in those things. But it happens, right? If you experiment, you never know what will happen. It's funny. And that's actually, then somebody sent me a screenshot of that, because when you become stock art, you can be purchased. And it ended up the next year on this whole thing about the history of the Armory show. And right before they showed me, they were talking about Man Ray. And someone saw, they were watching TV, and they sent me a screenshot. Otherwise, I would have never even known that was on, because I didn't see the episode.
So does the artist get a cut? I mean, if somebody downloads, if your picture's downloaded 100,000 times, nothing for you?
The artist gets, like, it's the traditional artist rap, right? You get nothing. Nothing for that. But you can turn it into something.
Yeah.
And yeah, this piece actually was sold by Margaret Bodell at the Outsider Art Fair, but before that, it was in a show in down near DC in a gallery that is associated with the Smithsonian Institution, in a show about environmentalism. And actually, she's not here, but Janine Brown, who's in our same studio building, had told me about this show and thought it would be good. I usually don't submit my art to stuff. I do my art because I have to, and I more kind of go with the flow, and if people approach me and ask to show it, that's the way my work usually gets shown, then I show it. But in this case, I submitted my work, and I was in this cool show that was called Metamorphosis, all about the environment. I don't know if you could see that clearly, but it says crimes against nature for money. And that's really kind of the epitome of how I feel about most of what happens against nature. So to me, that was like, that's my core message all the time, I think, that we're doing, as a society.
And I mean, they're not as shiny as they are in person, but you can see the screws. If you look, all the little Phillips head screws, it just adds such, I just love that whole...
There's a lot of plastic flowers in that one, too.
Subtext to it, yeah.
Yeah.
So...
Which is, plastic flowers are also an oddity.
What can I mean, it's Earth Day. I mean, it's the age-old question. So what can I do? I mean, okay, paper cups, does that?
Yeah.
But what does the average person do, or is it a matter of joining Sustainable Westport or doing something bigger?
Yeah, it is. Individual efforts are good, but they're not going to move the needle that much unless we get a mass, consciousness going through our individualized efforts together. It's too late to reverse much of this stuff. We have to stop producing so much plastic. Absolutely, there's really no other way around that. Recycling does not work, is a myth, and we cannot recycle our way out of this problem. And it goes with apparel too. I mean, of the fast fashion industry and just the apparel industry in general. I'm also a part of, I have studied sustainable fashion, and I'm very much a part of a lot of groups. And I attended at Yale it's a Sustainable Fashion Consumption Summit. It's the first one there, was last year. And the data all shows that, everybody thinks thrifting is so great, and all the young people seem to think they invented it right now. And it is great if you're using it instead of buying something new. But as a trend, it's convincing people that this is a solution, and the stats all say that people are buying more new stuff. They buy now something vintage or second market. In addition to that, they're gonna buy new plastic jewelry or all kinds of accessories. So it's capitalism that is really fueling a lot of these behaviors. It's not just the materials themselves.
Yeah, and you have statistics. I mean, if you want to rattle them off quickly, but like 99% of all plastics are petroleum-based.
That's correct. Fossil fuels, basically oil or gas. Yeah. And a lot of the cheap plastic, the ones the food packaging stuff, is fracked. So it's the waste from the fracking process that is turned into the film that is on and in all our food, which is very bad when it's heated. So I could go on about that, but that's, if people want to talk to me about the details of that, you can contact me anytime. So, so that's the weather squirrel you're showing now. Yeah. That was another me and Carl thing. Carl, I was pretty obsessed with squirrels and pink and weather, and he just said one morning in 2010, well, why don't you do something about it? And so I got up and drew that guy, and then I drew him for 2 years straight every day in a comic. And then that led to other stuff and projects with Margaret again that I did, public art projects, paintings, T-shirts, and then he ended up in over 30 countries, because actually he's much more popular than me, and there's people who have...
Carl or the squirrel?
Oh, Carl and the squirrel. Okay. But the squirrel, someone that, actually, this is a funny story, because this person is a constant traveler, but she's from Southern Florida, and she writes about, and she documents street art. But many years ago, I was stickering in Wynwood in Miami, and I turn around and I see this person peeling off my sticker, and I'm like, what are you doing? And she stuck it on her iPad, and it's this person that travels all around the world constantly. She has no permanent home, and she stickers. So she asked for stickers of mine, and she's the one who's got it in so many different countries. So
great.
And this is, I worked on a project called the Carbon Almanac with Seth Godin, who you may or may not know. Many people don't know him, but he is a best-selling author of 30 books in many countries, and he did this project, the Carbon Almanac, which he's very innovative in education and in other ways. You know, he's kind of developed this peer-to-peer education just before he started this project, which I was part of. And then he invited, you know, a lot of people to see if they wanted to take part in the Carbon Almanac. I saw it when there were more at the development of the building out the digital assets, getting it out into the public, launching it. It hadn't been launched yet, so I worked on many parts of that, and I wrote the online sustainable fashion resource guide that's on the website for that. But it led to me connecting with about 1,000 really passionate people all over the world that just volunteered. It was all volunteer project, and everybody had different skills, but it was really, if you could have the perfect group where everyone had the same objective and it was all good for everybody, no selfishness at all, it was like almost a utopia group. And through that, I ended up doing a lot of things, including speaking at the Yale School of Sustainability, which, you know, I am a dropout. And it's because I couldn't attend school. When I was young, I had an attention problem. I couldn't sit still. And I would always, you know, I didn't have any problem with the work. I just couldn't sit still and do work. So I dropped out of college, and I have no arts training by choice. However, I've taken a lot of coursework since then. So the thing about Yale is that it's kind of funny, you know, without a piece of paper that says I have a degree, that I spoke at Yale. And I've also been recruited to speak at graduate schools, and I was designer in residence at USC Roski in California. Like, so I will get recruited to teach at a master's level, but I can't get a job for like a base level, anything that required seeing a degree, which is another very strong theme in my work. Because as an artist, I'm always trying to level those things and value people for who they are, not if they can sit and take tests. And I'm not saying taking tests and going through regular channels is a bad thing. It works very well for a lot of people, but you don't have to do it to succeed or to have the chops to do difficult things.
Okay, well, there you are. You did a talk at MoCA, and Carl is actually, dare I say, a little more colorful than you are, right? So.
That sounds like a challenge, but or maybe an insult even. I'm not sure, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. Carl did take that photograph. He's wearing a net, you know, and I designed that hoodie for him out of the, you know, fishing gear is one of the top items that is inhabiting the ocean. You know, the plastic in the ocean is mostly from rivers, and you know, coastal communities all over the world, but there's a huge portion that is all fishing gear, so that's what that represents. And yes, we did a talk there. I introduced the Carbon Almanac, and then I had asked if I could put together a bunch of local, you know, those of us that live nearby and are making things sustainably. That's Richard Collini, who's in our studio building, and that's Ula Breen, who was, I think, 12 there, who has, she has her own nonprofit. She does have the advantage of using her parents' nonprofit to do her thing, but she makes really beautiful things, including, she always includes books for homeless kids that live in that have to be in shelters. So we all just talked about how we reuse things.
Is this you at Goodwill?
Yeah,
poking around. Yeah,
that's my stomping ground. I have been there hundreds of times. The outlet is a sad but wonderful, amazing place where I wear thick rubber gloves, and I go in when stuff first comes out there, and they don't let anybody touch it until they have the whole big lineup of bins all lined up with new stuff. People stand there, and they will kill you if you touch anything until they say go, right? Those people are there, and they want the good stuff, and they're standing there, and if you interrupt that process, it is not pretty. But it's also, it's not a very sustainable way to do it either, because people are so desperate to get the good stuff that they toss everything around, and a lot of very good stuff ends up broken. Or, you know, I've seen like a lot of games and puzzles, like vintage games, things, all kind of delicate things. People toss them to get to something else, and so they create more of a situation that's not sustainable. I go in afterwards and I go for the stuff that nobody wants, because after that it is going on a truck and it's either going to go to an incinerator. With the case of broken plastics, it will go to a landfill or an incinerator here or get shipped to another country. Yeah.
Is there a movie or
and this is,
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that this is a constant cycle. Those bins come out for an hour or two, they take it away, they're usually pretty full when they take them away, and all that stuff gets processed and becomes somebody else's problem. It's just never ending, right? So if things are intact, they might get a second use. Otherwise, they're not going to.
You know, isn't there a cartoon or movie, The Land of Unwanted Toys or something? Is that
The Land of Misfit Toys.
Misfit
That's
Toys.
from that Christmas story, which I always related to. Here's an interesting thing. This is Seaside Park. You know, I pick up these things all the time, all summer long, because these things are so cheap. These plastics aren't expensive. These toy sets are a few dollars, right? They get them at the dollar store. Parents get them. Kids leave them all the time. So I get hundreds and hundreds. But some of them are marked, and that one's distributed through a Brooklyn company. But it came from, if you could go to the next slide, all that way, probably made in a factory with child and forced labor with probably women and children, a lot of toxic chemicals because plastics are unregulated and you don't know what chemicals are in them or the dyes, and when the factories and the heat will cause fumes, and then they get shipped 8,000 miles to be used once. And then if you go to the next slide, to break up into microplastics and end up in the stomachs of fish and birds and wildlife. And they are finding, I had studied, I love research. I do a lot of research for my job. I do research and write thought leadership content that's like 3,000 or 4,000 word articles on AI and cybersecurity. Very good at research. And so I apply those skills to horseshoe crabs, which are a passion of mine. And I did find studies in Asia where, you know, they are, like the microplastics are getting into horseshoe crabs too and everything else. And also, I just want to note, because I think it's important, Friends of Animals, I think they're out of Darien, just wrote an article about the balloon ban, and balloons are the absolute worst for the environment, and especially letting them go. And the stat in there said that 1 in every 3 seabirds that ingests any part of a balloon dies. So if that's not a great reason not to have to use balloons anymore.
Plastic bags too, right? Yeah. They get aren't there islands of debris, plastic debris floating around in the ocean?
There are the gyres,
yeah.
The 5 gyres, and there are, but I think that's really not, most plastics actually sink. So what we see, we get upset about. What we're not seeing is much worse. These are just, you could just flip through these. These are just some signs I make. They're almost like street art level. They're of objects I find, like that's on the beach, and I just use found plywood, basic, you know, leftover house paint and stencil. So those are things I can use as outside street art. And sometimes I mix them up on purpose, like it says junk fool, to see if anyone notices. And it's also kind of tricky to stencil like that, so sometimes those mistakes aren't accidental. And this is another plastic. This is all ocean plastic related, so those were ocean plastic pieces. Carl took that photograph, and this is how we collaborated here. I collected all those things. Carl collected some of them too. He doesn't always join me at the beach, but when he does, he is very good about picking things up. And I had a big pile of them in buckets that I had curated, like all of those things. And I texted him from home and I said, will you take those things, arrange them any way you want, and photograph them, and then send me the files? So he did the arranging, and he created a really nice, high-quality image and color-corrected, and then I turned it into fabric and outfits. So that's like one, and if you flip to the next, that's one of the outfits I wear. People come up to me, I mean, so many dozens of people have come up to me when I'm wearing that because they think it's cool, especially at the art fairs where you're in, you know, a creative crowd, which is the point of launching that kind of work in those environments. Then you can talk about plastic pollution, chemicals, you know, you could talk about any environmental issue once you have someone's attention, because mostly people are too glazed over. It's too much, and I understand that, but that is the purpose of this work. And so I'm always looking for ways to engage people. This is another example where Carl did that. And then if you go to the next slide, there should be, and yeah, I'm wearing one of those. No, I'm not wearing that one, but it's similar one. And then sometimes I photograph, you know, I added some flowers to that and photographed it on a mannequin, but I also wear that. And then we get photographed in Miami a lot. I mean, there's hundreds of photos of us, and sometimes we get photographed in some years, and somebody will come up to us, like we were at a party at the Perez Museum during Art Basel kickoff, and some art dealer from Palm Beach came up and said, "Oh, I took your photo years ago, and then I blew it up and sold it in my gallery." And I said, "Oh, that'd be nice to see." And they never, like, almost always they don't follow through, but you see them, like especially Carl sees them, because people are always photographing my outfits when I'm not looking at them. So it's kind of just funny to see what happens. And that's, again, just we're in a museum. That photographer followed us around to get that perfect shot with the Keith Haring. He followed us through several rooms because I kind of saw him go through the corner of my eye. And that is fun. That becomes like performance art. It's got the purpose because we're doing the messaging about, you know, the environment. And we really just have to walk around. We're also enjoying seeing art. And then you're watching what other people are doing, you know. And the best part is just talking to people about the work and meeting other artists, too.
We need to get to some questions, but I don't know.
Yeah, we're almost done, too.
Okay.
This is 2025, the Outsider Art Fair, where Margaret Bodell, again, represented that work very bravely. My work is very different than the art in that fair. And, you know, that is what I know I keep giving kudos to Margaret, but she deserves it. I mean, I appreciate the vision she has had since we met, and not just with me, but with other artists. She has that vision, and she takes a chance to put something where she knows it belongs, but nobody else will take the chance, so. And then she also arranged a talk for me at the New York Public Library, and that's a shot. She also had some East Village poets from the environmental days that are still strongly representing, do some poetry. And then I think there's just one, and then that's just last month, where actually I decided to make smaller works because I thought it would be helpful, and Margaret did actually put a bunch of them into the hands of new collectors, so that actually worked out fine. And lastly, this is the plastic horse rescue. And I do take in rescues. If anyone has any or knows any, you know, plastic horses in dire need of rescue, they can come to my studio.
Do you ever open the door and somebody's, you know, it's like a cat leaves a present for you, a mouse on the doorstep? Do people leave stuff on your?
They do at the studio. Yeah, there's some people in the building that know, and. Carl brings home some adoptions. He brought me a few, I think it was yesterday, brought me 4 or 5.
So please, if anyone wants, you have to get up in front of the screen. It's harmless, but they need to record so they can hear your voice clearly to ask a question if you have one. There's a brave, no, they're going the other way.
I do want to thank my son Tyler too for the photographs, for some of the photographs, and that first one of me. He shoots all my installations. He's over there.
That was Herm Freeman, a great artist, has a question.
Thank you so much. I got to tell you, first of all, it's so refreshing to see an artist with so much commitment, and artists in general have commitment. And you topped the list. You and Carl and Margaret too. I was lucky to be next door to her also in a studio. But my question is, I'm so blown away by your commitment to your work, your intensity, and you've always been that way for as long as I've known you, and you walk around, you're a walking, living piece of art, and so is Carl. And if this is not too personal, what do you do for downtime? How do you refresh yourself and get your mojo back? Or is it necessary? You always seem so committed, so on. And last thing I just want to say, thank you, Kyle, for all you do and what you represent. It's so impressive. This audience should be, we're blessed to be in the audience, and there should be 10 times as many people to hear your message. It's so important, and I know you're all over the world. Wonderful. Thank you. What do you do for downtime?
Okay, what I do for downtime, I don't really. When I get totally exhausted, I really just like laying in bed, but it's really bedtime because I can only usually sleep for a few hours. Sometimes that's early, and then I pretty much toss and turn. And a lot of times I get up at 3 to start working.
So no bowling or
No.
Tanga or any,
I don't, yeah, all my things that I do are productive. So I might cook to get that's what I might do if I'm tired.
All right, one question.
Kyle, I really appreciate you being here. I love what you've done with the stuff. I'm really interested in your role, unless you have not begun, the role of teaching younger people, especially in high school and elementary school. I don't know if you've had any focused, or if in your future, plan to try to advocate with young people, many of whom parents are buying this stuff. And in some ways, if they only knew what could happen, maybe that would make a difference in what they ask for. But have you done work with schools?
Well, only recently. It's funny you should say that because a lot of people think my work is for kids, and it never is. And I never worked with kids. I've taught at the college level, and I do a lot of talks at colleges. And last year, the folks from Fairfield PTA did bring me in to a couple places, and I loved it. You know why? Because the kids actually pay attention and are excited and ask questions, where unfortunately, a lot of college situations, classrooms and groups that are more than a classroom, it looks like they're really bored. And, they might come up to you after, and, once you really have to work hard to just get them to be interested. I know that they are interested, but little kids are so interested. And so I'm always teaching little kids at the beach. I love teaching them how to hold horseshoe crabs and very safely and gently carry them. And then, they're just delighted to do that. And I did get a grant, which I executed at the Madison Clubhouse, or the Wakeman it's a Wakeman Boys and Girls Club, Madison Ave location. That was really exciting. I mean, I worked really hard to put together a series of, I think it was 5 or 6 workshops. But I found it's difficult without sort of a better infrastructure around it, because the kids were stressed out. It was after school, and it was hard to keep their attention. But the little kids, I agree with you, and I would love that opportunity, because obviously they are the future. Any person that's young, they're stuck with these problems. And I think there are lots of new career opportunities in material science and all other kinds of science, right, to try and solve this. So it's almost as if there's a whole new set of careers now, and they're interested, and they're doing things, and they will express their feelings, which is another problem we have in society, where everyone's too cool to, say anything, or too scared, right?
Yeah, well, great to get them young. Anne, do you have a question?
I love to quilt, and so I love working with fabrics, and the whole process is really exciting for me. And the reason why I'm saying that is, what is it like to work with materials that you really, want to decrease in the world? And is there kind of a love-hate, or what is that like?
Can you repeat that part? I'm not sure what is it like to work with materials that.
Yeah.
that you're advocating for the demise of. So you're
Because
Yeah.
I want them to be no more. It's
And you're spending your whole time getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. To
I
touch
just do
plastic.
that anyway.
Okay.
I try not to get too attached to things, but part of my study, part of my art, like a lot of my art is the response to it, or like what is it about? It's almost like an anthropological dig when I'm finding this stuff. And, especially toys, what happens to them, the emotional attachments people have to a shape. It's made out of plastic, but it's a shape of something that they're attached to like it's a real thing. Like I'm attached to those horses, I know what it is. But I'm fine with getting rid of it. I think I'm just as bad as anybody else with my emotional attachment to stuff in general. But using a material that I want to stop, I think we just have to. I know what you're saying, though. Okay. There is a sadness in change, right? Change is hard anyway, and there's a sadness in, I'm not going to be able to have that anymore. Like, what will I do? I mean, and I think all of our lives are like that. There's a lot of things we're going to have to stop doing, and it's not just convenience. It's things it's things we love,
Well, yeah, it's part of like letting go of childhood, but there's all these toxic things that we didn't know at the time.
Yeah, but I think for adults too, I mean, we all are consuming way too much. It's not sustainable. Plastic is an amazing material, and it's going to we're not going to get rid of plastic, but we have to stop the amount of plastics and the amount of stuff in general that we're using, because there's just going to be all polluting items that are emitting chemicals and nothing to survive on.
Well, that's a good ending to
Yes.
Earth Day. So thank you very much, Kyle. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Megs. And thank you also to Carol and everyone that
Thank to
helped
Carol
put
and
this
the
together.
library and the exhibit crew.
Library,
Yeah,
yes.
a lot of people involved.
Yes.
And Fred and the AV staff back
Thanks
there.
to everyone who came and listened. I know I can go on.
Oh, thank God.